I have never heard of something like this occurring.
Now it's 6. Attempts to execute Idaho's longest-serving death row inmate today failed. We hear from one of the attorneys who prosecuted Thomas Creech in his capital case. Plus, the man accused of killing 4 college students in Moscow was back in court today. The latest from up north with no trial date set. And plans for a cement plant in Nampa come to a halt. What's next for the company trying to set up shop?
You're watching Idaho's News Channel 7. This is the news at 6.
Our first objective is to carry this out with dignity, professionalism, and respect.
Good evening. Thomas Creech, Idaho's longest-serving death row inmate, is still alive. He was scheduled to be executed at 10 o'clock this morning through lethal injection, but the prison's medical team couldn't get an IV line. It's the first unsuccessful execution in state history. This is what happened from what witnesses inside the execution chamber explained. Early Wednesday morning, Idaho Department of Correction medical staff prepared for Idaho's first execution in more than a decade.
Our medical team did a physical assessment of Mr. Creech. After that assessment, they had communicated to me as well as Warden Richardson that they believed and had confidence that they would be able to establish venous access on Mr. Creech.
At 9:50 a.m., witnesses, including 4 members of the media, were brought into the execution chambers. Creech's wife, Leanne, and we're told his stepson were brought into a separate area. At 10 o'clock, staff brought Creech into the room on a gurney and placed him on the execution table. A few minutes later, he was covered with a white sheet. It's reported he made eye contact with his family, even subtly waved his hand while his arms were strapped to the gurney. At 10:04, the medical team started their assessments, hooked up an EKG machine, and prepped Creech's right arm for the IV.
In the walls, there are some holes where the IV tubing goes into the medication room or the medical team room, which is actually behind the execution chamber and is not visible to us.
At 10:11, that first IV in his right arm was established, but 2 minutes later, medical staff said it was unsuccessful, so they tried again. When that didn't work, they moved to the left arm. At 10:31, they moved to his legs.
What they encountered in some instances was an access issue, but in others where they could establish access, they were unable. It was a vein quality issue that made them not confident in their ability to administer chemicals through the IV site once established.
At 10:41, members of the medical team left the room to get more supplies, including needles. At 10:54, Creech lifted his head from the gurney and told the medical staff,
My legs hurt a bit.
When Mr. Creech noted discomfort with his leg, he was experiencing a cramp, and the medical team worked to try to assuage that.
They tried again, but they were not able to get a needle into a vein after a total of 8 attempts.
And at that point, they removed the sheet that was covering his legs, took off his orange, slide-on style shoes, pulled up his green scrub-style pants, and then worked around the hook and loop style straps that were restraining both of his ankles.
At 10:58 a.m., the prison's warden announced the execution would be halted. He pulled Director of Correction Josh Tewald aside. It's unclear what they talked about.
This isn't a do-it-at-any-cost process. That our first objective is to carry this out with dignity, professionalism, and respect. When it reaches a point in that process, at any step, where it looks like we're going to be unable to do that, that's when we call it off. It wasn't a difficult decision. It was the right decision.
All witnesses were escorted from the chambers, and Creech was taken back to his cell. His death warrant expires at 11:59 Wednesday night. Tewald said members of the medical team have done an execution in Idaho before. So what happens now? The state says they're currently considering their next steps. Shortly after the failed execution, Creech's legal team filed a motion to stay his execution. In a statement, they said in part, quote, "This is precisely the kind of mishap we warned the state and the courts could happen when attempting to execute one of the country's oldest death row inmates in circumstances completely shielded in secrecy, despite a well-known history of getting drugs from shady sources." You can read their entire statement right now at KTVB.com. And new at 6, reaction to today's unsuccessful execution from a former Ada County prosecutor. Our Abby Davis talked to Jim Harris earlier. Abby, Harris prosecuted Creech after he killed fellow inmate 23-year-old David Jensen back in 1981.
Right, Morgan, and that's the murder that Creech was going to be executed for. Authorities say Creech beat Jensen to death with a sock full of batteries and stomped on his head and neck. Harris called today's events bizarre and disastrous. He never expected something like this to happen. If they were to get another death warrant for Creech, Harris says the AG's office, the prosecutor in this case, will have to start from ground zero since his current death warrant expires tonight.
Starting in district court in Boise, and then going to the appellate court in California, and then going potentially to all the way to the Supreme Court in Washington, D.C. So I mean, this thing could drag on longer than he does. Let's put it that way.
While Harris supports the death penalty for Creech, he'd rather see Creech live out the rest of his life on death row. He just doesn't want Creech's sentence lowered to life in prison. And he says he'd rather the state execute Creech than allow him to rejoin the general population and put other inmates at risk. Creech has been convicted of 5 murders in 3 states, including 3 murders in Idaho. He claimed to have killed 42 people throughout his life, although that number has never been confirmed. Harris says he's prosecuted 6 or 7 murder cases in his career, but called Creech's the most interesting. And contrary to what some IDOC staff, Creech's attorneys and his family have said, Harris doesn't believe that Creech is a different man. Morgan.
Yeah, it's interesting. In their plea for clemency for Creech, his attorneys had said, you're not deciding whether to kill the Tom of 1981. You're deciding whether to let the Tom of 2024 live.
Yeah.
So interesting. He will live to see several more days. Abby Davis, thank you. Throughout the day, we've been hearing from Idaho's officials on the unsuccessful execution. Attorney General Raul Labrador issued a statement just over an hour ago. He said in part, quote, "Justice has now been delayed again following the medical inability to execute Thomas Creech. Today is a sad day for the families of his victims and a continuation of the pain they have endured for almost 5 decades." Governor Little said in part, the team of professionals at IDOC was prepared for the possibility that medical professionals would not be able to access the inmate's veins, a circumstance that has occurred in execution procedures elsewhere in the country. The competent and qualified medical professionals present and IDOC officials were cautious and did the right thing in not moving forward with the execution. Death Penalty Action is very vocal about its opposition to Creech's execution. Yesterday, the group delivered thousands of signatures to Governor Little's office to try to stop the execution. They said in a statement, millions of Idahoans' tax dollars have been wasted this week trying to execute a 73-year-old man. A sentence of death by incarceration will keep Idahoans safe while holding murderers severely accountable. Again, the state will decide what the next steps are for Thomas Creech, but his death warrant expiring at 11:59 p.m. today. The man accused of killing 4 University of Idaho students back in 2022 was back in Latah County Court this afternoon. The judge overseeing the case didn't make a decision on whether or not Brian Koberger's trial should be moved out of the county. He'll hear arguments over this on April 17th. The judge said he might make a decision on the change of venue on May 14th. Defense attorney Ann Taylor says she would rather determine a change of venue sooner rather than later. The state agreed, saying it doesn't make sense to delay the change of venue motion, requesting the judge first decide on where the trial is going to take place before setting a date for trial. Latah County Prosecutor Bill Thompson says the court should be able to determine how things like publicity will impact the jury pool.
There has to be a showing that that publicity or whatever has impacted the juror to the point where that juror cannot sit in this box as a fair and impartial juror and make a decision based only on the evidence presented in this courtroom. That's the issue that Your Honor is going to have to decide on the change of venue question. And you can't do that based on a bunch of affidavits from experts who say, Judge, there's been a lot of publicity.
There are other considerations besides just the massive amount of media and an impact on potential jurors. That's what we're going to talk about. I think it's timely. I think it's appropriate to set a change of venue motion. I think it is what makes the most sense for the court to make that determination and set a trial date from there.
The judge said he would prefer to keep the trial in Latah County. Trial date still to be determined. At this point, the state says they could be ready as early as March 3rd of next year. We will, of course, be covering all of those developments. We're back after this. Plans for a controversial cement plant in Nampa are halted. After hours of tense testimony last night that we covered on the news at 10, the City of Nampa's Planning and Zoning Commission denied the conditional use permit in a 5-4 vote. Arjun Binkley joins us with reaction from people vehemently opposed to this project and information on what's next.
Morgan, Utah-based construction company Sunrock wanted this conditional use permit, or CUP, to build the plant south of Nampa's airport in an area zoned light industrial, which was next to some neighborhoods. Now, residents of those neighborhoods have been very vocal against this plant being built where it was planned.
I do not have a doubt in my mind that when these folks begin to find out that we have a cement factory blowing dust into the air, corrosive dust into the air, that we're going to have a problem.
After hours of public testimony over a proposed concrete batch plant south of the Nampa airport,
5-4, this
motion passes to
conditional use permit has been denied.
Whoa.
Hold on.
Nampa's Planning and Zoning Commission denied the conditional use permit for the controversial project.
I was elated, super happy.
Residents of nearby neighborhoods have spoken out against the proposed plant. Roughly 300 people showed up for public testimony Tuesday night.
There's 1,240 homes, 3 schools. 2 of them are elementary schools. You know, I mean, it's not a good location.
Residents say if the plant was built at the proposed location, it would impact the airport, cause possible health risks from air pollution, and lead to increased noise and traffic on neighborhood roads.
My biggest concern with this project is the truck traffic, because their permit will allow them 4,000 cubic yards of cement a day. That means 400 loads coming out. So if they're coming out, there's a truck going in on these roads, these little roads right here.
The city says the first CUP for the project, which was approved last winter, expired after the company didn't apply for permits in time. In a statement, Sunrock said, "Our hope has always been to help build the community of Nampa. Every home, road, and building needs concrete. By having a facility close to the need, costs are reduced and trucks spend less time on roads, benefiting taxpayers, roads, and air quality." Sunrock has 15 days to appeal the Planning and Zoning Commission's decision. If the decision is appealed, it would go to Nampa's City Council.
The City Council can overturn a decision made by Planning and Zoning Commission. And then once City Council makes that decision, that's the final decision unless it's challenged in court.
A company spokesperson for Sunrock told us all options are on the table for whether or not they'll file an appeal. Morgan, if this does get appealed, there would be another round of public testimony in front of City Council.
And I'm sure a lot of people would show up to that as
yeah.
well. All right, Jude, thank you. When we come back, Idaho's chief meteorologist Rick Lance has got your blustery forecast.
From News Channel 7, time for 7 First Alert weather.
Well, all of these colors talks about quite a storm that's coming in tomorrow. So let me begin with the advisory. That's the brown area right through here in Boise and most of the valley. We're talking about wind in this case. Strongest gusts likely 45 miles an hour. I have seen them peak above 50 miles an hour, though. That's through here. This is a warning for the wind. Now, that's in eastern Oregon, as well as down over the Owyhee County area. And that has the possibility of winds that could gust as much as 65 miles an hour. The blue area here, this is storminess. So you're talking about a watch as well as a warning. And of course, most of this could be brought up to a warning status. We're looking at anywhere from about 6 to 12 inches of snow. When does this all begin? In the mountains, it begins tomorrow. Here in the valley, we're going to see it kind of develop during the day and especially in the afternoon. I just took a wider shot here. Show you that over here in the eastern sides of the state, they're still developing the same thing, just a little bit later. Now, the temperature currently is 48 degrees, but it is chilly out there, as you know. And as you look at Twin Falls, it's 44. Mountain locations have temperatures mainly into the 30s. Here are the wind chills. So Boise's down to about a 42. It's down to 38 degrees in Twin Falls. It's been really chilly past couple of days because of those wind chills, and it's going to continue that way because we have wind. And here you see the gusts today up to 30 miles an hour, 26 miles an hour for Twin Falls, 28 miles an hour for Caldwell. So gusty winds, we're going to be seeing that again tomorrow, but actually getting a little stronger later in the afternoon. So here's your high temperature. Temperature is up to 50 degrees tomorrow. Same thing for Twin Falls. So we're still watching these temperatures start to climb. But then here's our Wednesday forecast as you look at the winds, expected wind gusts. And you're going to watch it looks like kind of a domino effect that'll come right along through. I'm kind of explaining what to look for in this map. And that's the front. And along with the front, it's going to be causing some of these gusty winds. And look, even in Portland at tonight, expecting, which is right where the front is at, about 41 miles an hour. Now there it is, coming right along through here. And you see the wind gusts actually peaking, like going through Burns over here to Boise. And then we got the 54-mile-an-hour wind gusts. I think that's a little high, but nonetheless, it's moving through the area. And then for Twin Falls, some of those wind gusts also could be getting up to 50, 55 miles an hour. Now, if you look at the futurecast, here's for late this evening. We're starting to look here. That's being dry, but this is later tomorrow afternoon. So later tomorrow afternoon is when the showers begin. There could be a mixture of some rain or snow. That's into Friday. So as you can see, it's going to be somewhat heavy with that front. Temperature-wise, highs tomorrow into the low to the mid-50s. As we go into the mountain locations, temperatures up to 40 degrees, pretty close to 40 there, as you see for Haley. As you notice, McCall, as well as Donnelly, 41 degrees. So all these temperatures are coming up just a bit. Mainly it's snow in the mornings as the temperatures drop off, but for tomorrow, you can see some of these temperatures that are really starting to range up there into the upper 50s or so. So there it is for tomorrow, 62 degrees. Friday will be up to 51 degrees as it starts to really drop because of the cold front that's coming through. As you look at Saturday, we probably have a pretty good chance of some snow in the morning. The rain and snow is just kind of off and on for the next several days, and so we have a first alert weather day for tomorrow because of the strong gusty winds, especially through the area. Starts to dry next week, but our temperatures are still somewhere in the 40s, so it's a pretty phenomenal type storm.
Yeah, it says 62, but it feels like much lower.
It is. It's going to get colder, then we're going to get the winds, then we're going to get the rain and probably the snow. Kind of expect a lot, even a chance of a thunderstorm.
All right.
For later tomorrow afternoon, which means a little sun will pop in.
Oh, okay. We like that.
But a little.
We like that hope. Okay, official announcement today.
That's right. We had the news yesterday. Now Boise State has officially announced Dirk Cutter coming back to the Blue. We've got his contract details, and we'll tell you how his first day back in the football facility went. That's coming up next in sports. Well, we had reports yesterday, but now it is official. Boise State has announced the hiring of Dirk Cutter as the program's new offensive coordinator, making his return to the same job after serving as the interim OC back in 2022. Things went pretty well back then. This morning, Cutter was reintroduced to the players in the team room. You can see the excitement on the players' faces. Hey, Cutter's pretty excited too. He said in a statement he's happy to be back, even if he didn't really see this opportunity coming, and that he accepted the job because of his love for Boise State, his utmost respect for Spencer Danielson and what he is building, and how impressed he was watching the Broncos during last year's Mountain West title run, saying that attitude, determination, and work ethic is exactly what this program is supposed to be, and he wants to contribute. We also got Cutter's new contract details. He's going to make $460,000 on his one-year deal, the same salary that was going to go to his predecessor, Bush Hamden. Now, the program released a statement from Spencer Danielson, who said, in adding Dirk Cutter for the season, we are able to get everything I was searching for in an offensive coordinator. He's a proven play caller, a great developer of quarterbacks, and someone that can not only lead a dynamic offense, but will also invest in the lives of our student athletes, both on and off the field. He would go on to say, Coach Cutter runs an offense that I and our entire staff believe in. His addition is not just a one-year short-term fix. He will be able to coach, teach, and guide everyone in our facility in a new way that will set the program up for future sustained success. Now out on the road, the Boise State women's basketball team is peaking at the right time. They've rattled off 6 wins in their last 7 games, and they currently sit tied for second place in the Mountain West Conference. With 3 games left in league play, tonight the Broncos are going to face their toughest test before the conference tournament, traveling to take on 24th-ranked UNLV. For years, the Runnin' Rebels have been the perennial powerhouse of the Mountain West. Tonight, the Broncos are looking to avenge their 21-point loss from back in Boise earlier this season.
They've only lost, I believe, one conference game in 2 years, and so it's going to be fun to go down there and challenge.
They're a really physical team. They run fast, rebound, so we just have to lock in those little things, play our game, and just be confident.
We have to have competitive greatness. You've got to be good when you have to be good, and they're a great team. They're really well coached, but you know, we still have to compete, and I didn't think we competed very well when they were here.
Today they're walking with kids, 4th graders from Whittier Elementary here in Boise, to earn steps as part of the walking challenge.
New at 6, today state leaders strolled with students to raise money for a school of their choice. It's part of the Steps for Schools walking challenge. Throughout the month of February, the Blue Cross of Idaho Foundation for Health rewards legislators for walking with students. If they walk 10,000 steps, they get $1,000 from the foundation to give to schools of their choice. Coming up in a few hours on the news at 10, the execution of Idaho's longest-serving death row inmate failed today when medical staff at the Department of Correction couldn't get an IV in Thomas Creech's veins. Hear why the granddaughter of one of Creech's victims says today's failure put any semblance of closure even further out of reach. Thanks for joining us here on the news at 6. We'll see you at 10.